Hello, my name is Maggie Shipley, and I'm a private wealth advisor for Argent Bridge Advisors. Welcome to our quarterly coffee and conversation series. Joining me today is Eric Ashburn, partner and private wealth advisor here at Argent Bridge Advisors. We hope to provide clarity around 529 plans, as well as offer insight into how 529 plans play a role in your greater comprehensive financial plan.
Thanks, Maggie. I'm glad to be contributing to the conversation today. I know it's an important topic. It's been in the news a lot, colleges and 529s in general. So I hope to help provide some useful information to the listeners.
Great, thanks, Eric. Let's dive right in. So, do you want to start off by just giving everyone a brief overview of what 529 plans are and why someone might choose this route when saving for college?
Sure, Maggie. A 529 is designed to be a tax advantage savings plan, specifically for education. A few benefits of the plan are tax-free growth. So when you make a contribution, it grows tax-free as long as you use it for education. Those withdrawals, again, as long as they're for qualified expenses, all tax-free. It's high contribution limits compared to some of the other options. There are some state-specific tax benefits where you may get a deduction on your taxes from contributing. They are flexible and they have become more flexible in recent years. You can use them in the US and some abroad, as well as a wide variety of other uses, which we'll get into a little bit later. And then control. The account owner, whoever's making the contribution, has ultimately the control over the funds to change the beneficiary, to use it as an estate planning tool, and just can make changes as they see fit.
Great. And I
Um,
think we have a great graph that kind of lays out some of that tax efficient investing you were talking about. Let me pull that up.
yep, this is perfect. So this graph compares if you were to save for education in just a normal taxable investment account versus a 529 account. And you can see your dollar just goes further because you're not having to pay that extra balance for taxes and the gains over time. And the compounding is just greater because less is going to taxes when you ultimately have to take it out. So I think this chart does a pretty good job of showing that.
Definitely. We'll stop sharing that. Yeah, I think that's a great overview just to kind of give everyone an idea of just overall how much 529s can offer. So thanks for that, Eric. I do think that sometimes with 529 plans, people have maybe a misconception of, oh, if I invest in one, my money's lost if my student or child doesn't end up using it for college funds. So I think it could be really beneficial if we address some of the ways that we could use it outside of a traditional four-year college. So Eric, do you want
Yeah,
to
you're
address some
right.
of
That's
those?
definitely a common concern. And as I said, it continues to expand what it can be used for, but today it can be used for certificate programs, trade schools, graduate school, community college. Um, you can do $10,000 in kindergarten through 12th grade education. You can use up to $10,000 a year in student loan payments for each of the beneficiary and their siblings. And then once you are at the school, whether it be the traditional college or any of the other options I laid out, you can really use it for anything that's qualified. The IRS has a longer list, but some of the main things include room and board, tuition, laptop, books, things that you're going to need as a student, which adds up quickly, as many of the parents listening on the call know or will know soon enough.
Yeah, that's a great point. All those are you know, not every child is going to choose a traditional four-year option. So I think it's important to remember that the funds can still be used in other ways. And something else that a lot of people have questions about is, what if my child gets a scholarship? Because obviously you don't want to deter just because you've saved in this 529 account. You still want to encourage your children to attempt to get a scholarship. And so I think it's important to remember that you can always transfer the funds in one 529 to another 529 account for someone in your family. So if one child doesn't end up using them because they get a scholarship, you can always transfer those funds for another one of your children. Another thing that you can do is you can actually take the amount of the scholarship out of the 529 account penalty free. So there is a 10% penalty on anything that is non-qualified. You may still have to pay income tax for taking the scholarship out, but at least you know that if your child gets a $10,000 scholarship, you can still take those funds out, pay the income tax, but not have to worry about that penalty. So I do think that should be a good security blanket when you're investing in a 529, just to know that is an option. And then with leftover funds, there's actually been a new additional rule that I think we would definitely want to mention today, which is the option to roll over some of these funds to a Roth IRA for the beneficiary on that 529 account. Eric, do you want to speak a little bit maybe to those provisions and kind of the flexibility that that's allowing people now?
Yeah, so as you said, it is new, so some of the rules cases are still being figured out, but as of now, it's 35,000 in a lifetime that you can ultimately roll from a 529 to a Roth, and that account must be open for 15 years, which in order to make that contribution. So to start, that's two big things. Number one, it's beneficial to start early, because if it needs to be open for 15 years, you want to start making those first 529 contributions as soon as possible. And second is I think this is a timely rule, and we got a lot of questions about it beforehand, because if you oversaved or you just wanted to set up your child for success with saving for retirement, getting those retirement contributions started early, this is a great planning tool and great way to do that. There are some caveats. The student must be making income. Contribution limits still apply. There can be certain resets, some more complicated planning that comes with it, but it is definitely something that in our day-to-day conversations, I know we already talk about, and I think it'll be interesting to see what the future holds as far as planning goes relating to this.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a great rule that's been added just for flexibility and knowing that if that's the option you choose to give to the beneficiary, it's a great gift just because they might not be able to contribute to a retirement account right after college. And now they have these funds that they have that flexibility to roll over. So I think that that's definitely providing families more flexibility. Speaking of gifting, Eric, do you want to address some gifting limits and how much? I know in the beginning you talked about how it's more flexible with how much you can contribute to the 529.
Yep. So this changes a little bit every year with inflation, and new numbers calculated every year. But for this year, today, starting in 2024, you can gift $18,000 per person per year. So if it's husband and wife gifting to one child, they could give $18,000 each to that child, and you could gift that into the 529 account. It could be grandparents, whoever. Each person can gift 18,000, and 529s are also unique in that you can super fund a contribution, like do it 5 years in advance, so 180,000 at once, and then you wouldn't be able to contribute for the next 5, but this gives a larger sum that you get credit for each year and just more time to compound and grow tax-free. And that's especially important for those that have been paying attention to what college cost and what they're projected to be in the coming 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and we actually have this graph that shows exactly what you're talking about, just some of the projections for four-year college and how much tuition truly is going to increase and kind of what you can expect. I mean, if you look at just a newborn right now, how much we can anticipate their college will cost one day. And I think that just speaks to what you're talking about, super funding, how advantageous that can be. Just being able to put that large sum in and letting it compound and grow tax-free. It can definitely give the student a head start, just looking at these projections.
For sure.
Let's pull that back in. Speaking of grandparents contributing and gifting in that way, I just wanted to touch on, I know that we have a lot of listeners here in Virginia, just because that's where we're located. And a really awesome thing that Virginia's plan offers is if you're above the age of 70, so maybe you're contributing to a grandchild's account, you can fully deduct your contribution. So normally it's $4,000 in Virginia per account, but if you're above the age of 70, if you super funded an account for someone, you would be able to deduct that entire amount, which I think is a really big advantage and something that grandparents specifically, just because of the age demographic, could take advantage of. But Eric, a lot of people sometimes have questions about what 529 plan to open and whether it is advantageous to open one with your state, or if you should just, you can do one through another state. And can you speak a little bit to kind of why you might open one in your own state?
Yeah, it really depends on the state and if you're already working with an advisor. Most states have a couple of options, one with an advisor, one for more of the do-it-yourselfer that understands and wants to do it themselves. But which state you choose, if you're a resident of that state, can have some pretty attractive tax breaks. And you mentioned Virginia. Their fund, the 529 in Virginia for advisors, is managed through American Funds, which is the largest state plan in the nation, kind of by far. So it's one of the larger ones. It's very popular because of the options, flexibility. So definitely a great option for those in Virginia using an advisor. But we've worked with other state plans. It's really case by case, but definitely something to always evaluate what your state has to offer and what the tax breaks are in your state. Is it worth it? Anything else? Did I miss anything with that?
No, I think that just kind of leads into just like how great of an estate planning tool 529s can be. And I know our most recent coffee and conversation, we talked about that generational wealth transfer that's occurring. And I think that what we've been speaking to kind of shows how 529s can be used in that plan and how they can be used as a tool for transferring wealth across generations. Speaking about grandparents being able to provide that lasting legacy and support education. And even if those funds aren't used by that beneficiary that the grandparents may fund their account for, that beneficiary could use it for their kids. And it's just an easy way to transfer across generations. So I definitely think 529 plans are a great tool when it comes to estate planning and intergenerational wealth transfer.
That sounds great. And I think you covered everything I had. We could talk about 529s and everything much longer, but I think this is plenty for the first conversation.
Yeah, I think there's always a lot to cover. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to Eric or I. But yeah, I think this concludes our discussion for today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Like I said, we'd love to keep the conversation going and hear your thoughts. So feel free to reach out to Eric or myself and give us any additional thoughts or questions that you had on this edition of the Coffee and Conversation. So thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Maggie.
Yep. Bye.